The New York Jets have released their first unofficial depth chart of the season. I'm going to go over it so you don't have to.
No huddle, Wilson end zone, caught, touchdown, Elijah Moore.
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Jets with Tigo. My name is Tigo, and this is the first video being made after hitting 1,000 subscribers yesterday. Guys, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it. We are going to be doing a giveaway for 1,000 subscribers. I'm going to be giving away one of 2 items to one of my lucky subscribers, and they will be announced on my Twitter on Saturday. So make sure to go into the description below and find my Twitter handle and go follow me there. I will be announcing it this Saturday. It's exciting. Let's do it. But let's hop right into what you have a chance of winning. Guys, you can pick between 5 non-Jet rookie cards. You'll get the whole set, all 5 of them. Or you can get an individual Elijah Moore rookie card. Very exciting, very, very cool. Hopefully, whichever one that you pick turns into something and you can get some money in a couple of years. But I wanted to go over the depth chart that the Jets have released. A lot of interesting things on this depth chart. I wanted to go over it, but I will warn you guys right now, it is bright. So brace yourselves. Here we are, guys, at the depth chart, and let's just start and hop right into it. So I wanted to start by saying, obviously, you can't see this first, second, third, fourth the entire time as we scroll down, but that's how we look at it. We're going to start with the offense, go to the defense, and then wrap up the video with special teams. But let's start in the position group that I think makes the most sense. The least amount of things to talk about, I think that's the offensive line. I don't think there's really anything surprising listed here. George Fant, left tackle. Laken Tomlinson, Connor McGovern, Elijah Vera Tucker, and Mekhi Becton makes a lot of sense. I think the backups also make a lot of sense. At the beginning of the year, I had Connor McDermott as my left tackle replacement, but he has looked absolutely abysmal. So I think Chuma Edoga does get the nod there. Having Connor McDermott, even after the injury, listed as the backup right tackle, I think is just a way to get the team and Max Mitchell to kind of like earn that spot. I don't think that they're going to carry 5 tackles, but I also don't think that Max Mitchell is actually tackle 5 on this team. And the only other thing that surprises me is that Ross Pierschbacher is listed as the backup center instead of Dan Feeney. I would assume Dan Feeney would have been listed there because that's where he played before. And honestly, Nate Herbig is, in my opinion, the backup guard for both the left guard and the right guard, and Dan Feeney is kind of slated to be the backup center and whichever other guard if he needs to fill in. Nothing really interesting in the offensive line group. Honestly, I think it's just a lot of posturing when you look at Connor McDermott listed as the backup right tackle. I think that is Max Mitchell's job ultimately. And if we bring in a guy like Dwayne Brown or something like that, it's hard to imagine Max not making this team, even though he needs to make some weight. But we all know I do love Max Mitchell, so it might be my bias there. Let's talk about the tight ends, another position group with a little bit of posturing by the coaching staff in the front office. CJ Uzomah listed as tight end 1, absolutely makes the most sense. Tyler Conklin listed as tight end 2, absolutely makes the most sense. Here's where it gets interesting. Trayvon Wesco is listed as tight end 3 instead of Jeremy Ruckert. Again, I think that this is just posturing from the coaching staff and the front office, basically telling Jeremy Ruckert, even though you're probably going to end up being in a year or two the best tight end that we have on this roster, you're going to have to earn the right to be called tight end 3, tight end 2, tight end 1. We're not just going to give it to you because we drafted you. You got to go out and you got to earn it. And I think that he will, because I honestly believe that much in Jeremy Ruckert. He was, towards the end of my evaluation of the year, my tight end 1 of the class. I really like what he can do, and I really, really believe in him. I did want to mention Kenny Ebowa and Lawrence Cager. It sucks that these guys aren't going to be able to make the roster because I like both of these guys, and I think that they're, wherever they end up, hopefully it's on the practice squad, wherever they end up, I think they're going to ball out for whatever team that is. So keep an eye out on some team trying to claim Kenny Ebowa or Lawrence Cager. Let's talk about the most interesting position group, in my opinion, when it comes to the depth chart at wide receiver, so that you guys are aware of how I'm counting this. I count this top wide receiver here as wide receiver 1, this third wide receiver here as wide receiver 2, and this as wide receiver 3, because I look at it as the X the Y, and the slot. That's how I look at it. X, Y, Z, X, Y slot. When you're looking at the wide receivers. So, Corey Davis being listed as wide receiver 1 to me is super interesting because I look at Corey Davis and I say, as much as I like him, I want him to be our wide receiver 2 because I believe that much in Elijah Moore. I think Elijah Moore is honestly that good. He has all pro potential and I really, really like him. And I think he's our wide receiver 1. But I think it might be more of that coaching posturing, right? Corey Davis was signed to big money. He came in expecting to be wide receiver 1. That's what we expected from our coaching staff, is for him to be wide receiver 1. So until Elijah Moore earns it, and, you know, he was plagued with injuries last year and didn't play a full season, you got to have Elijah Moore listed as wide receiver 2. But here's where it gets interesting. Braxton Barrios is listed as wide receiver 3 in the slot. Makes sense. But in my opinion, wide receiver 4, because it goes 1, 2, 3, and then back up here for 4, is Denzel Mims, listed ahead of Garrett Wilson. Now, I love the idea of this, of Garrett Wilson having to earn his reps, but I also don't want to see Garrett Wilson buried that far down into the depth chart. He was taken in the first round, 10th overall. So I do want to see him getting snaps, but this wide receiver room being this deep and this like good ultimately is good for the Jets. I'm starting to look at the depth that we have and saying, why can't we be in win now mode? And keeping a player like Denzel Mims and all of that stuff makes a lot of sense. I would love to see packages of just the big wide receivers, you know, Corey Davis and Denzel Mims on the outside, and just telling them to just go deep and beat guys and go one-on-one with guys. And, you know, we have a smaller lineup where we can go Elijah Moore and Braxton Barrios, or, you know, the super fast lineup in Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, and Denzel Mims. There's a lot of different things that we can do with the wide receiver room, and having that go there makes a lot of sense. And then Jeff Smith listed as wide receiver 6. It makes a lot of sense. I think Jeff Smith makes this roster, 1, because he does bring a value to special teams. 2, I do think he has improved his game significantly. Not enough to dethrone any of these guys in their position battles, just honestly, but also because I think he can be our 3rd or 4th string quarterback in case the first and the second guy go down, and it's good to have a guy who has positional versatility. The only other thing that surprised me with the wide receivers is Ervin Charles being listed as the 4th team wide receiver instead of a 3rd team wide receiver. I really liked Ervin Charles in camp. I believe in this kid, and I like him a lot. So it's interesting to see him listed that far down the depth chart. Now let's move over to the quarterbacks. Nothing surprising here for quarterback. Zach Wilson listed as quarterback 1, Joe Flacco listed as quarterback 2, Mike White listed as quarterback 3, and Chris Streveler listed as quarterback 4. It makes a lot of sense. Zach is our guy for the future. We drafted him number 2 overall. There's no way that he's not going to win the job. He's obviously the best quarterback on this team, in my opinion. Joe Flacco is right there with him. He is the second best quarterback on this team. He's got a Super Bowl under his wing, and he's got the ring, obviously. It just makes too much sense to not have Joe Flacco as your number 2 quarterback. Mike White, while he did have one really good game, that was kind of it. For me to be able to look at him and say that guy is going to beat out Joe Flacco doesn't make sense to me. And then Chris Streveler, he's being brought in ultimately to be a practice squad quarterback, and I don't hate it. It's the right and smart decision to make. Now let's talk about fullback. Nick Bawden is the only player listed at fullback, and he should be. He's the only player I ever want taking fullback snaps. I don't want any of the tight ends coming to play fullback. Nick Bawden is our fullback, and the good thing about Nick Bawden, and we'll go into this a little bit later, is that he was also a quarterback before transitioning to the tight end / fullback. And so he is a guy that if Zach Wilson and Joe Flacco go down and Jeff Smith go down, we can bring Nick Bawden in. He should be learning the quarterback position, that playbook, just in case. It's good to have depth if you're in a bind and you don't have a third quarterback. And then last but not least, the position group that is most interesting to me, running back. Michael Carter listed as running back 1. I think that absolutely makes sense. Michael Carter earned the job last year. He didn't do anything this offseason to lose it. He hasn't been insubordinate, talking too much, doing anything really. He is running back 1. It's his job to lose, but as of right now, he is running back 1 going into the year. But here's where it gets interesting. Tevin Coleman as running back 2 instead of Breece Hall, which is interesting to me. But I think, again, it's posturing. It's, hey, you got to earn this spot. You've got to earn the right to be running back 2. Ultimately, I think he earns the spot to be running back 1. I think he's that good, but it is still interesting to see it. And then when you look at the listing and the way that they listed the running backs in the 4th team, Ty Johnson as the next man up, LaMichael Pirine, and then Zonovan Knight. I agree with this rankings. I think Ty Johnson, in my opinion, should be our running back 3. I know that he had the drops, but when he's in open space, he's dynamic and he can make guys miss. And he's also not scared to put a shoulder in the chest of any linebacker, safety, or cornerback. You love to see it. And as a running back 3, I don't expect a super polished talent. But running backs there, and that's the offense. Again, nothing super surprising in the sense of like it doesn't maybe seem like posturing from the coaching staff. But let me know what you guys think about the offense. Is there anything surprising in your eyes? Let me know. Defense. I'm going to work backwards to front because I think we're going to spend the most time talking about edge and defensive line. So let's not talk about them. Let's talk safeties, corners, linebackers, and then the defensive line. So let's start down here with the safeties. Everything that it's listed is exactly how I would have it listed. Jordan Whitehead and LaMarcus Joyner as the starters. That's exactly how I want it. And their backups are Ashton Davis and Jason Pinnock. Again, exactly how I want it. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, Elijah Riley, Will Parks, Tony Adams, or whatever. As much as I like Elijah Riley and Will Parks, I think Ashton Davis has a much higher upside. I just think that we're playing him out of position a little bit. We know that he has bad angles of pursuit coming downhill, and yet we keep playing him in a strong safety kind of role because of his raw athleticism. I would love to maybe see him play a little bit more of a, what does he look like in a free safety role and in coverage where he doesn't necessarily have to work super downhill, where he's kind of being your single high and playing in that coverage. What does that look like? I think he might do a little bit better in that role. And then Jason Pinnock being the 3rd or the 4th safety, depending on how you look at it, is exactly the way that it should be. I want him back there, and if we need to pull out Jordan Whitehead or LaMarcus Joyner, I want Pinnock getting a share of those snaps, especially over Elijah Riley and Will Parks. We saw a lot of good things out of Jason Pinnock last year, and I really want him to take the time this year to learn the safety position all out. And that's it. Now let's talk about the cornerback room. I think easily we see DJ Reed listed as cornerback 1. Now here's where I get really, really interested. They have both Bryce Hall and Sauce Gardner listed as CB1s. And it's not like they're saying that one of those guys is going to play the nickel, because right above that, they have the nickel corner in Michael Carter the second and Javelin Guidry as the second team, which is exactly how I want it. But they have all 3 of those guys listed as CB1. Does this mean that we're going to institute a rotation at cornerback? I'm not the biggest fan of it. And I'm starting to understand why you would want to keep Bryce Hall on the team and all that stuff, especially when you're looking at depth, injuries happen, all of that stuff. But it's very interesting to see that they list 3 guys as for 2 starting jobs. And then the next man up is Brandon Echols, which makes a lot of sense. He played well last year. I think he earned the right to be the next man up when you look at if there's an injury. Here's where I get a little bit interested is Isaiah Dunn is listed as the next cornerback instead of, let's say, a Justin Hardy. I don't see how we carry 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or even 8 cornerbacks on this team if this is the true depth chart, because you're going to have to carry DJ Reed, Bryce Hall, Sauce Gardner, Michael Carter, Javelin Guidry, Brandon Echols, Isaiah Dunn, and Justin Hardy for us to see all of these guys playing on this team. Is this posturing to maybe see if you can get someone to trade like a 7th round pick for Isaiah Dunn? I'm not sure, but it is an interesting thing to talk about because a lot of people aren't on board with cutting Justin Hardy. I am. I think we straight up just cut him. I don't think he has a spot on this team. We are too good at the cornerback position to exclusively have a player who just plays on special teams. You can teach that that job to a Brandon Echols, to a Bryce Hall, or one of the backup corners, because ultimately Having one guy who's not a value add on defense and is just a value add on special teams is not what we need. We're a good team now. We can't be wasting roster spots on special teamers. Next, let's talk about the linebacker position, because this really caught me off guard. CJ Mosley listed as the middle linebacker. Jameen Sherwood listed as his backup. Totally makes sense. I'm on board with that. Quincy Williams listed as the will linebacker, and Hamza Nasruddin listed as his backup. I'm on board with that too. Here's where it gets super interesting. The Sam, Marcel Harris, is listed as the third starting linebacker. A lot of people forget that we brought in Marcel Harris, and I am not one of those people. I love Marcel Harris, and I think that he's good. But how can you do that when you signed and you brought in Quan Alexander late, and he showed up to camp and played at the level that he's had? It's almost impossible for me to look at this and say, that's exactly how it goes out. I think Quan ultimately beats out Marcel Harris, and realistically, if he can stay healthy and he can play well, he has a shot at beating out Quincy Williams for reps. But ultimately, I want to give those reps to Quincy Williams because Quan won't be on this team next year, and there's a good to fair chance that neither will CJ Mosley, but we'll see. Linebackers listed pretty evenly, and then the third team, kind of cool, Delshon Phillips, DQ Thomas. I don't think any of these guys make the roster. These are three possible practice squad guys, and that's really it. Now let's talk about the most interesting position of all, the defensive line. I'm going to start on the interior of the defensive line because this is the one that gave me the most exciting feeling that I had, because we saw a player listed as a starter that I really wanted to be the guy lining up next to Quinnen Williams, and that's Solomon Thomas. I did not want Sheldon Rankins or Nathan Shepard or Jonathan Marshall to be taking reps next to Quinnen Williams. I really wanted Solomon Thomas to do that. And then the backups are listed as Nathan Shepard, Sheldon Rankins, and then the third guys are Jonathan Marshall and Tanzel Smart. I think that makes too much sense. I think ultimately you're going to try to trade or cut one of Sheldon Rankins or Nathan Shepard. It just doesn't make sense keeping both of those guys on. And you drafted Jonathan Marshall. You got to see what you can get from that kid. He's got to get reps. This is in the preseason, is the time where he needs to show that he is just as good or just as valuable as Nathan Shepard or Sheldon Rankins. And I believe in the kid. I think he can do it, especially in the system that we run and how we go about our front four. Tanzel Smart's an easy cut. He's just listed because he's on the roster. Now let's talk edge. Carl Lawson, Jonathan Franklin Myers as our starting edges. It makes the most sense. Now, here's where I really got surprised when we're looking at the backups. Vinny Curry is listed as Carl Lawson's backup instead of Jermaine Johnson. I think that this is posturing, making sure that the young buck earns his spot. But I am a big fan of us listing Jacob Martin as the second edge on the other side. I really like Jacob Martin. I believe in this guy. I watched a lot of Houston Texans football last year because I have a friend who's a huge Houston Texans fan, and Jacob Martin always came in, and when he was playing, was disruptive. Bryce Huff listed as the third edge with Jermaine Johnson. Like I said, I'd put Jermaine Johnson over Vinny Curry, but that's interesting. And then the only one that I look at that's kind of weird that he's listed this far down is Michael Clemens. It makes a lot of sense. We've got a lot of good players at the edge position, but we spent a draft pick this year on Michael Clemens. The guy has to make the 53-man roster, and I don't know if we carry 7 edges into the year. Does he take Vinny Curry's spot in the sense of you bump Jermaine Johnson up to the second team and then Michael Clemens comes into the third team with Bryce Huff? Probably. I think that's what ultimately ends up happening. But really, really interesting when you look at this depth chart. So guys, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Is there anything that surprised you here? Oh, sorry, we didn't talk special teams. Totally makes sense. Eddie Pinheiro and Greg Zuerlein are competing for the kicker spots. Makes sense. I think Greg is winning that competition, in my opinion. Braden Mann is the punter and the holder. Obviously makes sense. And then returners, Braxton Barrios. I don't really care that they're listing Rashad Davis as the second team kind of guy, or Zonovan Knight, or Elijah Moore, or anything like that. I think it's ultimately going to be Braxton Barrios taking them. And if it's either one of those guys isn't there, I think Tevin Coleman is going to be the next guy up, and then Elijah Moore is going to be the next guy up. If both of those guys get hurt, but knock on wood, they're not going to. And one of my favorite players on this Jets roster, Thomas Hennessy, best long snapper in the league. And there's stats and facts that can back that up, that he's one of the best in the league. But There we go, guys. Now we've talked about everything. Let me know what you guys think about the depth chart. Are there any things that surprised you? Let me know in the comment section below. And last but not least, go Jets.